The gospel this morning comes to us from Luke chapter 9, 28 through 36. Peter, John, and James witnessed the transfiguration of Jesus. Now about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And as Jesus was praying, the appearance of his countenance was altered, and his raiment became dazzling bright. And two talked about him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of Jesus' departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and those who were with him were heavy with sleep, and when they wakened, they saw Jesus' glory and the two men who stood with him. And as the two were parting from Jesus, Peter said to him, "Teacher, it is well that we are here. Let us make 3 booths, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Not knowing what he said. As Peter said this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my child, my chosen. To this one you shall listen." And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silence and told no one in those days anything of what they had seen. May God add understanding to the reading of this gospel. Amen. Be seated. One of those regular once-a-year scriptures. So fun. In the gospel lesson this morning, we have another of the great hinges in Jesus' life upon earth. We must remember that he was just about to set out to Jerusalem and to the cross. We've already looked at one great moment when Jesus asked the disciples who they believed him to be in order that he might discover if anyone had realized who he was. But there was one thing Jesus would never do. He would never take any step without the approval of God. And in this scene, that is what we see him seeking and receiving. What happened on the Mount of Transfiguration, we will never know for sure. But we do know that something tremendous did happen. Jesus had gone there to seek the approval of God for the very decisive step he was about to take. And there Moses and Elijah appeared to him. Moses was the great lawgiver of the people of Israel. Elijah was the greatest of all prophets. It was as if the princesses of Israel's life and thought and religion told Jesus, "Go on." Jesus could set out to Jerusalem now, certain that at least one little group of his followers knew who he was, certain that what he was doing was a consummation of the life and thought and work of his nation, and certain that God approved of the step that he was taking. Are there times in your life that you wish you had that same certainty, that confidence in what you're about to do next on your journey? I think all of us can answer that in the affirmative. But there's one vivid sentence in the gospel. It says of the 3 apostles, when they were fully awake, they saw Jesus in his glory. In life, we miss so much because our minds are asleep. There are certain things which are liable to keep our minds asleep. There's prejudice. We may be so set in our ideas that our minds are shut. A new idea knocks at the door, but we are like sleepers who will not awake. There's mental lethargy. There are so many who refuse the strenuous struggle of thought. The unexamined life, said Plato, is the life not worth living. How many of us have really thought things out and thought them through to the end? There are some people who will skirt the howling deserts of infidelity. And perhaps a wiser person might think it would have been better to have thought their way through them. Sometimes we are so lethargic that we will not even face the questions and our doubts. And there is love of ease. There is a kind of defense mechanism in us that makes us automatically shut the door against any disturbing thoughts. But life is full of things that are designed to awaken us. There's sorrow. Just this past Friday, as we heard of the massacre of the mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, the 49 lives taken, just simply for gathering in prayer on the holy day of prayer for the Muslim community. Through those tears and anger, we can be awakened. And if we are awakened, we can accept that awakening. We are able to see the other injustices in the world and become activists to end all such acts of hate. There is love. This emotion should awaken our souls and our spirits. Real love is an awakening to horizons we never dreamed were there. And there is a sense of need. For long enough, a person may live the routine of life half asleep. Then all of a sudden there comes some completely insoluble problem, some quite unanswerable question, some overmastering temptation, some summons to an effort which we feel beyond our strength. In that moment, there is nothing left to do but cry, clinging to heaven. That sense of need can awaken us to God. We can't be fully receptive of the powers of God if we're so sleepy, so lethargic that we can't even see the glory of God. During this past Wednesday night, the discussion of Moses coming down with the commandments came up. We talked about how the shine from Moses was so bright and brilliant that he had to cover his face before he could look upon the people. I think that is the awakening that we need this day on our faith journey. That sense of being in the awe-inspiring presence of our God, fully awake and ready to accept God in all the glory. Lord, may we always pray that you awaken us and keep us awake to the power of your mercy and your grace. Let us always see our fellow people with the same bright shine that you had as when Moses and Elijah departed you on the Mount of Transfiguration. There are so many things in our world today that we want to close our minds to and us to go to sleep and ignore. But we can't do that. There are injustices all over the place that we must address. And to address them, we must be fully awake. We must be willing to look upon the full glory of the brilliance of Christ's glory. Not be afraid of that bright light, but to be drawn to it so that we can continue to answer that call.